We're very excited to have this gentleman because he literally was in 5 countries today. 5. I've often done transit through 1 airport on a day. He's done 5. He started this morning off in Bermuda. And then he was in the UK, in Switzerland, took a car here, and he's heading to Amsterdam right after this to go speak at an event there. So he's a man in very high demand. We're very fortunate to have him to give a little keynote talk and then a panel conversation. I'm sure you've heard of Bittrex Global, most secure digital asset exchange in the world, serving retail and institutional clients globally. It's regulated in Bermuda, which makes this talk particularly interesting because he's going to talk about the experiences from a Liechtenstein exchange with the European regulatory environment. Please welcome Oliver Linch. Enjoy and have fun.
Am I sitting here?
Stay there.
Good afternoon. Oh, that's very loud. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll speak quietly. My name is Oliver Linch, and I'm CEO of Bittrex Global. I'm here today to talk to you about the regulatory environment in Liechtenstein and what it's like to be operating, as we have been doing since 2019, in Liechtenstein. And what better place to be doing it than the place that I've been pleased to call my hometown for nearly a year now. And just in case immigration officials are listening, I said nearly a year. I have 2.5 weeks left on my immigration permit, and I know I've got to leave before then, so no worries at all. And what a great way to round off what has been a great year for me, really getting into the weeds of what it means to be part of the crypto community in Liechtenstein. In going through this speech, I want to focus not just on the past, but how the past can inform and educate and guide the path to the future success of the Liechtenstein crypto sector. Because we put a lot of time and effort and money into Liechtenstein, and frankly, that's just me learning how to spell the name of the country. We want Liechtenstein to be a success, and we think that Liechtenstein has a place in the global crypto environment, not just in amongst the middle, but leading the way, as it has been really since 2018-19, when this crazy ride in Liechtenstein all started. MiCA is coming. We all know it's coming. We've all kind of been told it. No one really believed it for a couple of years now. But it's here. We have what we assume will be the final text, and by probably about this time next year, it will be in force. The new dawn will have risen. Now, there are 2 ways of looking at this. From a Liechtenstein perspective, I think of MiCA of the adoption of MiCA as a vindication of everything that Bittrex Global and Liechtenstein has been saying for years. This is the world, or at the very least the EU, which is much the same thing in a lot of these places, finally accepting what we at Bittrex Global and Liechtenstein has been saying for years, which is that the only way to do crypto seriously, responsibly, and in the way that is self-sustaining and mature is to do it in a regulated environment. So we win, right? We've done it. We've convinced the world of our vision. But I'm going to talk a little bit about why that's important and what it means and how that should influence what we do next. But there's a but coming. And the but is the challenge of MiCA. Because up until now, Liechtenstein has had a natural advantage, along with a very small number of other countries in the EU, which have their own issues. Liechtenstein is the only country that has genuinely regulated crypto. So if you, like Bittrex Global, believed in doing crypto in a regulated way, well, Liechtenstein is a natural place to go. Obviously, you would come here. Come MiCA, come this time next year, or whenever it turns out to be, there's no longer that natural advantage because everywhere in the EU will be doing crypto, by definition. So why would you come to Liechtenstein when you could go to your, let's be honest, more familiar environments of the Netherlands or Ireland or Luxembourg or Belgium or whatever your preferred member state of choice is? You're going to have not just 1, 2, or 3 jurisdictions, but all 30 EEA member states to choose from. So that's the challenge, making sure that we in Liechtenstein are not victims of our own success. So let's take the first thing first. Let's take the good. Let's take the vision for what regulation means and what that means for Bittrex Global operating here on a day-to-day basis. So when people come and say, well, we're regulated, everyone says it now, right? We've heard it today, we hear it at conferences around the world. We're regulated too. And the question is, or at least the question ought to be, what does that mean? Okay, you say you're regulated, but aren't you the same people that 10 years ago, when Bittrex was first pushing for crypto to be regulated, aren't you the same people that told us that government interference is anathema to everything crypto stood for? Aren't you the people that, in some instances, sent death threats to the founders of Bittrex, saying that they were undermining the true essence of crypto? Have you really changed your mind on this? Well, look, in some cases, yes. In some cases, the industry has grown up and has genuinely seen the need for regulation. And we count every single one of those as a win, because that's us convincing the world that crypto has a place as a mature asset class alongside traditional finance products that should be taken seriously and in the grown-up way. But in a lot of cases, we all know that jurisdictions or companies or both are using the cloak of regulation, the language of regulation, as a trophy, to put in their trophy cabinet, to get a few press headlines so that they can say we're regulated too. So the question you need to be asking yourselves, and the question that Liechtenstein has done a really good job of asking, is what does that mean? How does that affect your day-to-day life? What standards are being applied? Where are you regulated? And probably most importantly of all, how does that protect the end user? How does someone that wants to get involved in crypto, but is not a sophisticated trader, is just a normal person like me, how am I protected by that regulation? What does it mean to be regulated? Well, Liechtenstein answered that question. Liechtenstein, at the very early stage, said, we are going to apply standards rigorously with a regulator that is going to very quickly educate itself on what makes crypto different and how it works. And so come to our office, and you will see every day intelligent people working very hard to do all those things that at a bank would be totally uncontroversial, but in crypto are still controversial. Well, you wouldn't put your money in an unregulated bank. You wouldn't dream of it. So why should you put your money on an unregulated exchange? So when Mika says that exchanges and token issuers, and maybe NFTs, but they're a little unsure on that, but we'll get to that later, should be regulated, we say, yeah, well, we've been doing it for the last 3 years, 4 years. We've been here, we know what that looks like, and unfortunately it means making hard choices. It means turning away business because you can't guarantee that it will comply with the rules. It means turning down product lines. It means spending lots of money doing boring but necessary things. And I apologize to my compliance colleagues. They're not boring. They're very interesting people. And I'm saying that as a lawyer. But it's tough work, right? And every time you have to turn down a significant business line because it fails to meet the standards that we all know should apply, on the business side, your heart wrenches a little bit. But that's what it means to operate in a global industry and a global regulated industry. And that's what Liechtenstein has very early on accepted. And that aligns fully with Bittrex Global's view for crypto. So the challenge. How do we make sure that all the time and effort that we've put in as a partnership between Bittrex Global and between other regulated entities, and there are an increasing number of them under the CVTG in Liechtenstein, that partnership with Liechtenstein, how do we make it a success in a post-MiCA environment? Well, from my perspective, there are two big things that Liechtenstein will still have going for it this time next year and thereafter. The first is that standard to be applied, what it means when I say I have a token. Right? The TVTG's genius, if I can say that without sounding like I'm sucking up to too many people in here who wrote it, is not to regulate the industry on a day-to-day basis, but to really get to grips with what crypto is, to change the private law so that I can say with confidence What is the property right associated with this token? What does it mean when I say I own it? What does it mean when I say I transfer it to you? And what does it mean when I say that you don't own it? Those are questions that are not easy to answer, and Liechtenstein has done a great job of answering them in the TVTG. Other member states are going to have to consider their own response to that, and in accordance with their own legal traditions, that is going to take some time. Well, if you're a user and you want to have confidence in the exchange that you're using, you want to know what you're transferring, you want to know what you own, you want to know what it means if I say I have 1 BTC. But if I have a pen, we're all kind of okay with what that means. It's absurd that in a lot of the world, I cannot answer that question about these things that have huge value and are being traded in large quantities. And the second thing that Liechtenstein has going for it is experience. It has not always been an easy ride. Living in a futuristic world, as a lawyer, you always want to be at the cutting edge of things. You always want to say, this is a fast-paced environment. It's changing on a day-to-day basis. The reality is a lot less glamorous. The reality is the technology often moves significantly more quickly than the practice, certainly than the laws, certainly than the regulators. So what Liechtenstein has, and what Bittrex Global has been the beneficiary of, is a regulatory environment and regulators that have done those hard miles already, that have educated themselves, that have got over the hiccups and bumps and lumps along the way, and now have, in the FMA in particular, a serious body of people that genuinely understand what's going on in crypto and genuinely understand their place in regulating it. Now, that is hugely valuable. That is experience that other member states simply won't have or will have to buy in. But it's not all rosy here either. Liechtenstein has been doing crypto for longer than anyone else, but in the grand scheme of things, it's been 5 minutes. Now, 5 minutes in crypto terms is about a decade, but it's still not been very long. There are still areas, there are still individuals that are still thinking in traditional finance terms. Liechtenstein exists in a private banking environment. That's what the country, that's what the regulators have known and have been used to. Well, an environment that is geared, that is designed, and that is premised on sitting around a nice conference room table, having a cup of tea with a client, or cup of coffee, I should say, sorry, I came across as a bit English there, having a cup of coffee with a client and checking their passport, that doesn't work when you're trying to operate an exchange with millions of users globally. And it's scary. And there are times where you lapse into traditional ways of thinking. You lapse into applying old world methods, if I can call them that, to the new world. So yeah, Liechtenstein has a significant advantage over other member states. But Liechtenstein has to look at itself too. It has to realize that those member states that want to make a success of crypto are going to throw money at this. They're going to leverage every inch of their reputation, every centimeter of their reputation, that was the Englishman in me again, every centimeter of their reputation to make a success if there's the political will. They're going to do it, they're going to compete, and every time Liechtenstein stumbles, every time there's an example of that old world thought influencing the new world and the new mechanism of doing business, Germany and the Netherlands and Luxembourg and Ireland and Estonia and Cyprus and Malta are going to pick up on it. And they're going to say, look, you're undermining your own system. So we have a year. We, Liechtenstein, we, Bittrex Global, we have a year to whip the system into shape to make sure that it can compete and that we can compete and that we can continue to create the regulatory environment that we have developed, continue to cement the reputation that we are gaining, and continue to operate crypto in a way that is sustainable, responsible, grown up, and compliant for years to come. Thank you very much.